The Secret Conversation. Sean Murray explains McGee's role in the new NCIS era. The studio lights had long since dimmed, leaving only a quiet glow in the corner office. It was well past midnight, the kind of hour when truth had a way of slipping out, unfiltered, unpolished. Sean Murray leaned back in his chair, fingers loosely wrapped around a cooling cup of coffee, as if time itself had slowed down just enough to let him think clearly. "People think they know McGee," he began softly, his voice carrying the weight of 2 decades. "But they don't. Not really. Not anymore." Across from him, the interviewer didn't interrupt. Something in Murray's tone suggested this wasn't going to be a standard answer. This was something deeper. Something personal. "McGee used to be the guy in the background," Murray continued. "The tech wizard, the loyal agent, the one who had all the answers but never needed the spotlight." He paused, a faint smile crossing his face. "That was comfortable. For him, and for me." The room settled into silence again. But it wasn't empty. It was full. Of years, of stories, of everything that had changed. But the new era of NCIS? Murray leaned forward slightly, his expression sharpening. "It doesn't allow for comfort." He let that statement hang. "Everything shifted," he said. "Not just in the storyline, but in how we understand leadership, responsibility, even identity. McGee isn't just reacting anymore, he's shaping things. Quietly, yes, but deliberately." The interviewer finally spoke. "So, you're saying McGee is becoming the center?" Murray shook his head gently. "Not the center. That's the interesting part. He doesn't want to be the center. That's what makes him different." He stood up and walked toward the window, looking out at the dark city skyline. For a moment, he seemed less like an actor and more like the character himself. Thoughtful, observant, carrying something unseen. "In the old days," he said, "leadership looked like certainty, like having all the answers, making the hard calls, standing firm no matter what. But McGee, he's redefining that." "How?" the interviewer asked. Murray turned back, his eyes reflecting something almost nostalgic. "By questioning everything." There was a quiet intensity in his words now. He's not trying to replace anyone. He's not trying to fill a void. What he's doing is building something new. A different kind of team dynamic. One where trust isn't commanded, it's earned. One where vulnerability isn't weakness, it's strength. He walked back to his chair, but didn't sit down immediately. "You see it in the way he handles cases now," Murray explained. "He listens more. He observes. He lets others take the lead when it makes sense. But when the moment comes, when it really matters, he steps in. Not as a boss, not as a replacement, but as someone who understands the weight of the badge." The interviewer scribbled something quickly, then looked up. "Was that always the plan for McGee?" Murray laughed softly, shaking his head. "No, not even close." He finally sat down again, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "McGee grew into this role. And honestly, so did I. There were moments, real moments, when I had to ask myself what kind of leader he would be. Not the obvious answer, not the expected one, but the honest one." "And what did you find?" the interviewer asked. Murray's expression softened. "I found that McGee leads with empathy. That's his secret weapon." He let out a slow breath. "In a world where everything is fast, intense, and high stakes, empathy slows things down just enough to see clearly. It's what allows him to connect the dots others might miss, not just in cases, but in people." The room seemed to lean into his words. And in this new era, Murray added, that matters more than ever. There was a brief pause before the interviewer asked the question that had clearly been building. Is McGee ready for what's coming? Murray didn't answer right away. Instead, he picked up his coffee, took a small sip, and set it back down carefully. Ready? He repeated. No one's ever really ready. That's the truth. His gaze drifted slightly, as if he were seeing something beyond the room. But he's prepared, he continued. There's a difference. Readiness is about certainty. Preparation is about resilience. And McGee, he's been through enough to know how to adapt. The interviewer nodded slowly. So what does that mean for the future of the team? Murray smiled again, but this time there was something more assured in it. It means the team evolves. It means the dynamics shift. You'll see characters stepping into new roles, forming new bonds, facing challenges that test them in ways they haven't experienced before. He leaned back, crossing his arms. And McGee? He becomes the anchor. Not the loudest voice, not the strongest presence, but the one who keeps everything grounded. The interviewer looked thoughtful. That's a big responsibility. It is, Murray agreed. But it's also a natural progression. If you've watched him from the beginning, you can see it. Every mistake, every loss, every victory, it's all been building to this. He paused, then added quietly, even if we didn't realize it at the time. The clock on the wall ticked softly, marking the passing seconds. One last question, the interviewer said. What's the one thing fans should understand about McGee in this new era? Murray didn't hesitate this time. That he's still learning. There was no dramatic emphasis, no grand statement, just a simple truth. He hasn't figured everything out. He still doubts himself. He still makes mistakes. But that's what makes him real. That's what makes him relatable. He stood up again, this time with a sense of finality. And honestly, he added, that's what makes him exactly the kind of leader the team needs right now. The interviewer closed their notebook, sensing the conversation had reached its natural end. As Murray walked toward the door, he stopped briefly, his hand resting on the frame. You know, he said without turning around, the secret isn't that McGee is changing. He glanced back over his shoulder, a quiet confidence in his expression. It's that the world around him is finally catching up to who he's been becoming all along. And with that, he stepped out into the hallway, leaving behind a room filled with echoes of a story still unfolding. One shaped not by sudden transformation, but by years of quiet, steady growth. In the new era of NCIS, Timothy McGee wasn't just surviving. He was defining what came next. The hallway outside was quieter than expected. Sean Murray stepped into it, the soft hum of the studio lingering behind him like a fading memory. For a moment, he didn't move. The door clicked shut, sealing off the conversation, but not the thoughts it had stirred. Because the truth was, that conversation hadn't really ended. It had only just begun. Down the corridor, a single light flickered above a closed set door marked NCIS, Stage 4. Murray glanced at it, then started walking. His footsteps echoed faintly, each one measured, almost deliberate. There was something about empty sets at night. They held on to energy. Scenes performed, emotions lived, decisions made. Ghosts of stories. And tonight, it felt like McGee was still there. Murray pushed the door open. The bullpen lay in semi-darkness, illuminated only by the ambient glow of computer monitors left in sleep mode. Desks stood exactly where they had been hours ago, frozen in time. Papers, coffee mugs, a jacket draped over a chair, It all looked real enough to blur the line between fiction and reality. He stepped inside slowly. "This is where it changes," he murmured to himself. Not dramatically, not all at once, but inevitably. He walked toward McGee's desk, running his fingers lightly across the surface. For years, this had been the place of support, the spot where McGee worked behind the scenes, solving problems before anyone else even knew they existed. Now, it felt different. "Funny thing about evolution," Murray said quietly, almost as if speaking to someone unseen. "You don't notice it while it's happening." A voice, calm, familiar, seemed to answer from the silence. "That's because you're too busy surviving." Murray froze. It wasn't real. It couldn't be. And yet, in this space, reality had always been flexible. He turned slightly, and in his mind's eye, he could almost see him, Timothy McGee. Not the younger version, not the unsure, eager agent from years ago. This was a different McGee. Steady, grounded, watching everything. "You've changed," Murray said under his breath. The imagined McGee tilted his head slightly. "No, I've grown." Murray exhaled, a faint smile forming. "Yeah, that sounds like you." He pulled out the chair and sat down, leaning back as he looked across the bullpen. Other desks, other lives. A team that had been reshaped time and time again. "And now they're looking at you differently," Murray continued, his tone thoughtful. "They expect more." "They always did," McGee replied in that quiet, measured way. "I just didn't see it before." Murray nodded slowly. "That's the part people don't understand," he said. "They think leadership is something you step into all at once, like flipping a switch." McGee's voice softened. "It's not a switch. It's a series of moments." Murray glanced down at the desk, considering that. "Moments where you could step back, but don't. Moments where you speak up, even when you're not sure. Moments where you take responsibility, even when it's easier not to." The words hung in the air. "That's the new era, isn't it?" Murray asked. No answer came this time. But somehow, he didn't need one. Because he could see it now, not just in McGee, but in the entire team. A shift away from rigid hierarchy toward something more fluid, more human, more uncertain, but also more real. He stood up, walking slowly toward the center of the bullpen. "There's going to be a breaking point," he said quietly. "There always is. Every great story had one. The moment where everything fractures, where choices have consequences that can't be undone. And when it comes," Murray continued, "you're the one they'll look to." He stopped, staring at the far wall where case photos were usually pinned. "Not because you're the strongest," he added, "but because you understand what's at stake." For a long moment the room was silent again. Then, "What if I get it wrong?" The question felt different, heavier, more human. Murray closed his eyes briefly. "You will," he answered honestly. No hesitation, no sugarcoating. "That's part of it." He opened his eyes again, his expression steady. "But you'll learn from it, and you'll keep going." A faint sense of resolution settled over the space, as if something unspoken had finally been acknowledged. Murray took a step back, letting his gaze sweep across the entire set one last time. "This isn't about replacing the past," he said firmly. "It's about carrying it forward, in your own way." And that was the key. Not imitation, not comparison. Evolution. He turned toward the exit, but before leaving, he paused, just like he had earlier. "There's one more thing," he said, his voice quieter now. If anyone had been there, they might have thought he was talking to himself. Maybe he was. Being the anchor, it doesn't mean you never drift. A beat. It means you know how to find your way back. The words lingered, settling into the fabric of the empty room. Then, without another glance back, Sean Murray stepped out of stage 4. The door closed softly behind him. And inside, the bullpen remained, still, silent, waiting. Waiting for the next case, the next challenge, the next moment where everything would be tested. Because in the new era of NCIS, the stakes weren't just higher. They were personal. And for Timothy McGee, the journey wasn't about proving he could lead. It was about discovering what kind of leader he truly was, one decision at a time. Somewhere, in the quiet space between fiction and reality, that journey was already unfolding. And soon enough, everyone else would see it too. Morning came faster than expected. By the time the first rays of sunlight filtered through the high windows of Stage 4, the bullpen no longer felt like a place of echoes. It was alive again, phones ringing, keyboards clacking, voices overlapping in controlled chaos. Sean Murray stood just off camera, script in hand, watching it all unfold. But today felt different. There was an edge in the air. Not tension exactly, something sharper. Anticipation. "All right, people, listen up!" The voice cut cleanly through the noise. Murray blinked. For a split second, it didn't register. Not because the line was unfamiliar, but because of who had said it. At the center of the bullpen, Timothy McGee stood with quiet authority. Not loud, not forceful, but undeniable. And the room responded. Conversations stopped. Heads turned. Even the smallest movements paused, as if the entire space had recalibrated around him. Murray felt it immediately. This is it. Not a dramatic promotion. Not a ceremonial handoff. A moment. The kind he had talked about the night before. Behind the monitors, the director whispered, "And action." But Murray barely heard it. Because what he was seeing wasn't just a scene, it was a transformation finally stepping into the light. McGee glanced around the team, his expression focused but calm. "We've got a situation," he began. Naval intelligence flagged unusual activity tied to a cyber breach, potentially internal. A murmur rippled through the agents. Internal meant complicated, personal, dangerous in ways that weren't always visible. McGee didn't raise his voice to regain control. He didn't need to. "I want options," he said simply, "not assumptions." That landed. Murray felt a quiet satisfaction settle in his chest. That's the difference. Old leadership might have pushed for immediate answers, quick conclusions, decisive action. But this was something else. This was patience under pressure. Across the room, one of the agents hesitated. Should we lock down access points first, or trace the breach source? McGee considered it, not dismissing, not rushing. Both, he said, but stagger it. If we lock everything down too fast, we tip them off. If we trace first, we risk losing the trail. He stepped closer to the screen, pulling up data with practiced ease. Start with a soft trace. Keep it quiet. Let them think they're still invisible. The agent nodded and moved. No hesitation now. Murray exhaled slowly. It wasn't just the decisions. It was how they were made. Measured. Intentional. Human. A producer leaned in beside Murray, whispering, "He's carrying the scene." Murray didn't respond right away. Because what he was thinking was, he's carrying the team. On set, the tension built as new information streamed in. "McGee, another agent called. "We've got movement. Whoever's behind this just accessed classified personnel files." McGee's expression tightened, but only slightly. "Which files?" A beat. "Former agents." The room shifted again. Now it wasn't just a case. It was history. Murray felt that line hit harder than any explosion or plot twist. Because this was the new era he had been talking about. The past wasn't gone. It was active. McGee straightened, his voice steady. "Pull the list. Cross-reference with any recent activity, financial, digital, anything that stands out." He paused, then added, "And flag anything that connects back to us." The weight of that statement settled over the bullpen. Back to us. Not them. Not the agency. Us. A team. A family. And suddenly, the stakes felt even higher. From the sidelines, Murray folded his arms, watching closely. This was the breaking point he had mentioned. Not loud, not explosive, but critical. The kind of moment where leadership isn't about control, it's about trust. On screen, the agents moved quickly, following McGee's direction without question. Not because they had to, because they believed in it. And in him. Minutes passed, each one tightening the tension. Then, "I've got something," an analyst called out. "One of the accessed files, there's a pattern. Repeated logins over the past week." McGee stepped closer. "Who?" The analyst hesitated, glancing up. "It's someone we know." Silence. Murray felt his pulse quicken. Even though it was scripted, even though he knew this was coming, it still landed. McGee didn't react immediately, didn't jump to conclusions, didn't let emotion take over. Instead, he asked the only question that mattered. "Are we sure?" The analyst nodded slowly. "Yes." Another pause. This one heavier, because now the moment had arrived. The one that defines everything that comes after. Murray leaned forward slightly, almost unconsciously. This is where he chooses. On set, McGee took a breath, not dramatic, not exaggerated. Just enough to steady himself. Then he spoke. "All right," he said. "We follow the evidence." No hesitation, no bias, just truth, even when it hurt. The team exchanged glances, then moved, more focused than ever. Murray felt something shift inside him. Not pride exactly, something deeper, recognition. Because this was the answer to the question from the night before. Is McGee ready? Maybe not in the way people expected, but in the way that mattered most. The director's voice cut in. "And cut!" The room instantly broke back into reality. Conversations resumed. Crew members moved in. The illusion dissolved. But something lingered. Murray stepped forward, walking into the bullpen as the actors reset for the next take. He looked around, taking it all in again, but now with fresh eyes. Because what had just happened wasn't just a scene. It was proof. Proof that the quiet evolution, the subtle shifts, the countless small moments, they had all led here. To a leader who didn't need to prove anything, because he already had. Murray glanced at the desk, then toward the center of the room where McGee had stood. And for a brief second, the line between actor and character blurred once more. "You found your way," he murmured. No answer came. But he didn't need one, because the evidence was right in front of him. In the new era of NCIS, leadership didn't arrive with a bang. It emerged in moments like this, quiet, certain, unshakable. And as the cameras prepared to roll again, one thing was clear. This wasn't the end of McGee's story. It was the moment it truly began. The second take never happened. Not right away.